Good evening, YouTube. Plains Prepper here. Tonight we're going to be teaching you how to make some self-arrow tips that will slip easily over the end of a 3/8 inch dowel rod. They are really simple to make, and you can really turn out a bunch of them. You can see here I've got 2 on arrows and 4 just waiting for dowel rod. I carry some of these in my bug out bag because the shaft is not hard to make. It's not hard to find. I carry duct tape with me, so you can see here. There's the fletchings on it right there. So that part is not easy. The hardest part I find is making the arrowhead. And with something like this, it easily slips over the end of the arrow shaft. And you've got something that, I think everything but maybe this one is legal to hunt deer in this state. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Alright, the things you're going to need to make our rifle brass arrowheads are, you're going to need some JB Weld, a piece of paper and a pen for making our pattern, some scissors to cut out your pattern, a rifle case of some kind. This is actually a steel cased 8mm Mauser. I have a lot of this laying around, so this is what I use because I can reload the brass ammo, so that's why I use steel. You're going to need some kind of metal for your arrowhead. This is just a cleat that fell off of a T-post when I was putting up a fence. The one that I don't have pictured here, you're going to need either a hacksaw or some way of cutting out your arrowhead and for modifying the brass to take the arrowhead. I've used a hacksaw before, but it's a lot of work, so I'm probably going to end up using my Dremel just because it saves time, and if you got power tools, you might as well use them. But we'll get to the next step here. Just stay with me. Okay, after a bit of trial and error, this is what I came up with. I did some research and found out for my state, in order to legally take deer, your arrowhead needs to be 9/16 of an inch wide. I went ahead and made this one 3/4 of an inch wide, so that way I had a little more metal to work with when I was trying to JB Weld this on. And plus, that way, if anybody asks questions, if I do go out and hunt deer with these, I can say they're 3/4 of an inch wide, which is well over the 9/16 requirement. How I came up with this is I measured up a 1/2 inch, drew a line, perpendicular line, measured up another inch, and then I measured, what was it, 3/8 out to one side, and I drew this half, and then I just folded it in half and then cut out. That way everything was symmetrical. As you can see, I kind of traced it here and it's not exactly symmetrical. But just to go over it again, it's 1.5 inches tall. The widest point is 3/4 of an inch wide, and that is at a 1/2 inch up from the bottom. Do some research, find out your own state, or if you're just making these to make them, you just kind of go nuts. As you can see from the earlier in the video, some of those I just had some scrap metal, and so I just glued it on there and sharpened it up, and so they're probably way wider than they ever need to be, but they are effective. I've shot them all at targets, and they all have about the same penetration. So I guess now we'll work on transferring this to our metal. Alright, here you can see I've transferred a couple of these to my chunk of metal here, and what I tried to do is anywhere there was already a line or like most of the metal is already cut away, I tried to place my pattern there, so you can see, like this is where I put my first one, where this cleat is, because I already have one side cut for me and I only have to trim a little bit off this side, and then the same thing will happen here, and then once both of these are cut out, the same thing will happen again here. I'm probably only going to do 3 of these for now, just because time constraints mostly, but if you're going to do this, you would probably want to sit there with your pattern and try to figure out how to get the most bang for your buck out of your metal. I know these rivets tend to present a problem when it comes time to cut them out, so if you've got the same thing, if you're using the same thing I am, try to put those in the center. Like if I was going to make another one, I'd try to put it right in the center. That way you're not having to try to cut through that or grind that off in order to make your edge, and also that makes a nice little notch that the bullet can sit on. So just kind of the big thing with these is plan ahead. Make sure you've thought out the whole process before you start cutting, because always remember, measure twice, cut once. But let's get to cutting these. First thing you need to do is cut off the rear end of your rifle casing. Cut it however long you feel like doing. I usually try to leave myself a little extra space just in case I screw up. And again, I'm using a Dremel for this. If you got a hacksaw, it'll work just the same. I've done this before with the hacksaw, but I've got the Dremel, so I'm going to use it. Alright, there you go. Now we have the body of our arrowhead. Next step is going to be to cut some slots for our arrowhead to sit in, but I think before I do that I'm going to actually cut out the arrowhead. That way I can fit it in there and see where I need to cut at. As you can see here, it more or less matches up with our pattern. I didn't quite get those two angles straight, but I mean, it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big a deal, because this isn't the part that you're worried about. This is the part you're worried about that's going in, needing to be sharp. So next step here is I'm going to put an edge on this side and an edge on this side. You can try to do an edge on each side, so it's more like a knife blade, but really as long as this tip is sharp, it'll penetrate and it'll do its job. So I always just sharpen one and then the other. That way I don't have to waste a lot of time trying to put a knife edge on here, or potentially screwing this up by, grinding too much off. So let's get set up and we'll do that next. Alright, you can see here I put an edge on each opposing side. I don't know if you can really see that. It's plenty sharp though, and it'll do well enough for going into whatever you happen to be shooting at. If you had to, you could just leave these, just the point that they have on them. I mean, you cut them out right and they'll be sharp enough, but this adds just a little bit extra and it's got a little bit of a cutting edge on it now. So I guess our next step would be to get our rifle case finished, and then we can put the sucker together. I don't know how you can see that, but I just cut a couple notches in that rifle case. So now I put this in there. It sits in there just like so. Last step will be just to JB weld this together and have one completed arrowhead. Alright, when it comes to this JB weld, it's pretty straightforward. Just follow the directions. I think it's half of the hardener and half of the actual weld, and I just squirt some out on a scrap chunk of paper for me to work with. That'll be plenty. Alright, and just mix that together. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of get a big old glob of it on the end of the arrowhead here. That way I know at least that much that I'm sticking down into the rifle brass is covered. Make sure she's once you got it set down in there, then just take the rest of it and kind of give it a real liberal coat up around the edges to kind of seal it in. Oh, we're losing it. Alright, and there you have it. Once that's set up, which usually, I think I've got the quick JV Weld, which sets up in like 5 minutes. Generally, before I ever put these on the arrow or try to shoot them, I let them set overnight. But that's one completed arrowhead. Like I said, to put on the arrow, you just put a little hot glue in there and slide it over the end of a 3/8 inch dowel rod or whatever you happen to be using for an arrow shaft. And that's all there is to it, really. I keep a few of these in my bug out bag because I figure the arrow and the fletchings are easy. The arrowhead is not, and I generally carry a hunting slingshot with me, and it's set up to where if I need to, I can use it as a sling bow. So that's how I plan on shooting these should I need them, rather than having to stop and build a bow. But for now, it's Plains Prepper signing out.